ADHD Babes, the podcast, a podcast hosted by the ADHD Babes community for the community. Please note, nothing mentioned during the podcast is meant as a diagnosis. If you believe you have ADHD, please seek professional advice and visit or join ADHDbabes.com for help with diagnosis. No clinical diagnosis is required to join. And now, you're listening to the next episode of ADHD Babes, the podcast.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of ADHD Babes, the podcast. Thank you to everyone who has joined us by listening so far. Please don't forget to follow us so you never miss an episode, and also rate and review and share so that others can find us too. Today's episode is hosted by me, Julez, and today we're going to be discussing body doubling. We're going to be delving into this over 2 episodes, and today we're focusing on the how and why. Let's start with what traits us ADHDers struggle with. There's a day-to-day struggle in motivating ourselves to do things that we find boring, as ADHD gives us interest-based motivation. This means tasks that seem menial, although important to carry out, will be avoided, even if it's a short task. At home, this may look like housework, cleaning up, organising our space, and life admin such as bill paying, doing the laundry, you name it. At work, this may be avoiding admin tasks or finishing a task you've already started. So it's interesting because when I think about the many tasks I tend to avoid, one of them specifically is the housework. Ways I avoid it is seeing a pile of plates in the sink and just thinking it's too much. I don't know where to start. So that immediately puts me off. So I don't even bother. I'm like, I'll deal with you later. And later comes by and
A week
don't
comes
do it.
by.
A week comes by. I have to be on my very last piece of cutlery. And even then, sometimes I'm just kind of like, I'll rinse the one fork. I just need one fork. So I'll just rinse the one fork. So that for me, like washing the dishes, things I can just also think I can overthink myself into oblivion of trying to figure out whether or not I want to do this task and why do I have to do it, or it just feels so hard to just simply open the laptop or simply open the page on the book in a book to be able to do something. You just kind of just like my brain tends to run wild. So those are ways that I sort of struggle with, kind of like ways that I also kind of like avoid tasks. So I can get just to come off of that, what else do you think? What do you kind of like other ADHDers, what do you kind of like think they might have when it comes to like avoiding tasks?
As in what tasks they avoid, or what in ways in which they avoid it?
In ways that, what tasks? Because I think we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but then it's interesting I want to hear like the unhinged ways we have of avoiding tasks, because some of them are very unhinged.
Sometimes
I.e. me, one spoon.
Well, I suppose it's like on scales, because then you obviously have like task paralysis where we won't do any of it. We just won't move. And there's been plenty of times where I'm sitting there going, okay, you need to wash the dishes, you need to clean the kitchen, you need to do this, you need to do that. I ain't moving though. Like, I'm like, okay, get up. And then my mind will be like, oh, do you know what? I forgot to tell blah, 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 so-and-so. Like, I swear my brain will find any reason to distract itself. Like, I will sit down to do admin, like literally I think we joined this call and I was like, oh, I need to book my MOT. I will research galore and never actually do it. So I have like tabs open with all of the places that do MOTs, because I need to obviously compare prices because no one wants to overspend on your car. And hours later, I did that at lunchtime. It's now the evening and it's still open and I still haven't booked the slot.
You enter a rabbit hole because in your head you have a process of doing things and you don't want to skip out on the process. And so when you visually see the process, it just becomes overwhelming. So you're just like, yeah, that seems a bit long, especially in the space I'm in right now. I'd rather not do that task. I can heavily resonate with the MOT or like sorting something out, knowing that it's going to make your life a little bit easier. For example, I wanted to get a new walker for my dog, but I was like, it's easy, right? You just find a couple of companies. No, 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 no. I have to go on their Instagram page to watch their videos. I have to, I have to kind of like see reviews. I'm a review babe. I like to read reviews. And if I see one-off review, I'm just like, because I find that I'm going off the tangent a little bit, but I find that people, when you've done something wrong to them, that gives them more reason to write a bad review because obviously, clearly, it's upset them to their core that they had to write a bad review. So I take every bad review as okay, I believe this person and I'm not sure I want to bring my business here. So, and then I confuse myself into a rabbit hole and then I'm like, I'm still stuck with the same walker.
Mm.
A walker that I said I wanted to change like weeks ago.
Yeah, or
And
you'll do it at the last minute and it'll be like you've spent weeks researching it and then you're like, oh, I'm out of time. I just need to make a decision now, and you just pick anything. And it's like your research didn't even didn't
It
even
didn't
come
even
in.
it didn't even like amount to anything because
No.
it was a sheer panic
Yeah.
of like I've left it last minute. It needs to be done now. And then
Mm.
realizing, okay, I'm just gonna pick whatever. But yeah, so it's interesting that we've kind of like talked about the things that make us avoid tasks.
Mm.
So it leads on to the thing of so what is body doubling? Which is what we're here to talk about. Body doubling is essentially a productivity strategy where an individual works on tasks in the presence of another person to enhance focus and motivation by introducing accountability and reducing the feeling of isolation by providing a community. It can make tasks more enjoyable and less daunting. Basically, the presence of another person can turn a boring or tedious task into a more pleasant experience which can help overcome the reduced motivation often associated with ADHD. Additionally, the calm presence of a body double can help reduce hyperactivity and distraction and make it easier to stay focused. So think about it. Whenever you need to complete a task, are you motivated by being in the presence of other people working or being on the telephone with a friend or a family member whilst cleaning your house? So I would like to begin with, uh, it's so interesting because all of a sudden when I'm on a conversation with my sister, because we tend to have like really long conversations and sometimes it's every other day, 3 days, that's when all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to have a long conversation with her. So that's going to make me want to cook my dinner. So I'll cook my dinner in the presence of her, whilst we're on the WhatsApp. So that helps me complete tasks because sometimes I can be like, I don't have anything to eat when there's a full fridge of food. Um, but it's taking the energy to be able to cook the meal. So it's encouraging
Mm.
having somebody over the phone where I can do that. So my sister tends to be my accountability without her really knowing, because I use the opportunity of knowing that actually I know this conversation is going to be an hour and a half and I could use this time to do other things that seem really mundane, to kind of just get stuff done. And I tend to get stuff done when I'm
Yeah.
on the phone with her.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would love to know yours.
I have a few, you know. It's funny that you say about talking on the phone because I remember one time my grandma, I used to get into a routine of calling my grandma every Sunday. And she one time was like, "What is all that banging?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just cleaning." And then the next time, "What is all that banging?" "Oh, I'm just washing dishes," or blah blah. To the point that she said to me, "How comes every time you call me, you're cleaning?"
So are you using me as your cleaning buddy without
My
like
consent.
asking for authority?
Yeah. So I definitely do that too. Another thing that I do is that obviously, like when we're watching TV or podcasting. So something that I developed in the pandemic was I wasn't in the car as much or on the go as much, so I wasn't listening to as many podcasts. So I would plug in the podcast or put on a show and then clean.
Hmm.
And then it also gives you like a timeline as well because or cooking is also one that I do. It really helps me to actually stay focused on cooking by listening to something else. Um, and the other one is like when you're, although I suppose it's not technically body doubling, but sometimes I would just have like a friend come over and they won't be helping me clean, but they'll just be there.
Hmm.
They'll be present.
And you also find like having someone come over shifts your butt into gear of like all of a sudden you're like, my house is a mess. I need to at least make it look a little bit presentable. Then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, they come you at least one room looks presentable so they can stay there in that one
Yeah.
room. But while
Yeah.
they're there, you just talk and you're like, yeah, just washing the dishes out the room.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, now I can do something because you're here.
Mm.
And I needed to do it. And it's
That
so
is
interesting. It's so interesting you talk about podcasts because I was heavy into podcasts and being able to kind of get stuff done. So, for
yeah.
example, um, again, making my dinner, doing my laundry, even kind of like putting out my laundry and stuff, just being able to do that. I'm like, okay, I know the podcast is going to be about 2 hours. So I'm like, if it's a really juicy episode, I feel like I can get 6 tasks done. And I'm like, wow,
Mate,
look at me.
mate, mate, whole kitchen will be done in 30 minutes, you know what I
I'm
mean?
like, productivity.
Yeah, and I know it's not like a traditional form of like body doubling, but I do think it is because podcast is not like music. You're not like putting on an album and saying this
Hmm.
is going to be done in an hour. I'm going to do that. Podcasts are actually people talking, so I feel like sometimes I'd be having a conversation with them. I'd be like, "Yeah, girl, you know what I mean?" I'd be
Hmm.
commentating. So
Yeah,
I do think it's you know, a backdoor body doubling.
yeah. And so going off of like we've talked about our own sort of versions of like body doubling. There are basically two ways of body doubling and how it can be achieved. So there's the physical body doubling. This is where someone is physically present with you in the same room. The person may not be completing the task with you, but occasionally being there is all you kind of probably might need. So I think we kind of go back to um like when we talked about having friends over and just having them there to just being able to just sit there and you can kind of just like clear your stuff. Or if it's
Mm,
something that you're trying to get done or you're trying to get through emails and just having that person there. The person is not really like expecting much of an interaction
no.
and they're okay with just kind of being there and you just being able to respond back to emails and stuff like that. And
Mm.
also like I kind of go back to my sister. I really use my sister sometimes. Like I think like she'd
You should
probably
be
be like, "Where's my check, bro?"
in it.
Because you rely on me a lot. Um, and so there's been times where she has come over and she'll be doing her work, and I somehow will sit on the sofa with her and be like, I think there's also kind of like a not a second hand thing, but it's just always thinking like, if you're working, I should be doing something. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
So I utilize that moment of knowing that my sister's doing her bit of work. And I'm like, actually, maybe I should get on with doing stuff. So I find myself like applying for things or, making sure I'm responding back to emails or messages that I have just forgotten to get back into. So that is something that I always sort of like utilize physical body doubling.
mm,
Um, and I think we've kind of spoken about that. Um, the next, the second way is virtual body doubling. This is when someone is present remotely. That could be over the phone or utilizing a video conferencing tool. It can boost your productivity by simply being in the presence of others being productive. So, um, I'll go back to you and ask you like what have been other ways outside of what we've already spoken about
Mm.
where you've used virtual body doubling.
Probably more so at uni, although I'd like to like incorporate it more in my day to day because I do work from home. Um, but I think at uni was one of those times where it's like, oh, my friend's there and we're doing the same piece of coursework, but because they're doing it, I'm actually getting it done. Um, but I don't think that I think like virtually, I think obviously like we mentioned before, like using your sister or my grandma as a almost virtual body double by having them on video call or on phone call, whatever, and then being there while we get our stuff done. Um, but yeah, most importantly, I think it was kind of at uni, like if I wasn't physically with people in the library, then I would be like on a call with them. They'd just be there and then be like, oh, ask questions when you can. And it also allows me to just keep talking when I need to
Mm,
have a little break and like have a little chat, then go back to work.
mm. Yeah, that's really, really good. I'm trying to think of like I at one point used to have a friend where they didn't probably know that I was kind of like using the opportunity to get stuff done. But because we used to FaceTime each other all the time, I always used to think I should utilize this time and not just lie in my bed and just have FaceTime because there'll be times where it's just like deadpan silence, but we'll stay on the phone with each other. And
I love those
unless
friendships.
unless I feel like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I don't want to talk, so I'll go and say bye. But sometimes it will just be kind of like we're just on the phone. So I would just
Mm,
think, okay, let me use this opportunity to again wash my dishes or,
you just reminded me.
or kind of just do like the stuff that I struggle to deal with, to do. That could be like, um, even because some people, like for example, I can't eat on the phone. I'm very weird about like eating and talking because again, I just have like this interesting dynamic with food. So,
Yeah.
so I just tend to like use the opportunity to kind of just like do this like tough, like, making my meal, or
And then
washing my
go,
dishes.
okay, my food's ready, bye.
Yeah, I literally do that. I literally do that. My friend used to be so annoyed. She'd be like, I'd be like, I'm about to eat. I'm gonna go. She'd be like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm about to go eat. So you can't eat on the phone? Yeah, no, I don't do them things. I don't know. I just, because I tend to eat two bites, and how I eat is not conventional. It's
Fair enough.
very so. I don't want people to be asking me questions like, "You finished your food already?" No, I just take two bites and put the food down and come back to it. Like that's how I
Yeah,
eat.
a pigeon.
Yeah, exactly. So I just do it mainly because I don't want to have the answer the questions.
Questions. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it is. I do find the virtual body doubling really really helpful. Um, and I don't think at first I didn't think that it was a thing. Like you don't realize that you're doing it until you do it, if that makes sense. Um,
You just reminded me of something like actually I tend to use a conference call between my two aunts because one of them in particular could just she doesn't I'm sure you know when ADHD runs in the family, but she will just talk and 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 talk. So you could just have her and you could just kind of be there. And then they're always like, oh, Shauna typing away, doing her work, and I'll be writing a script or doing something else. They're just in
while
the
they're just
background on
talking
the
away.
phone. Yeah. And I'll interject being like, hold on a minute, go back, go back, go back. You say what? And then I'll hear and then I'll you hear me on my keyboard again.
And it's so interesting you say that because you're going back to a generation that's a little bit older than us that don't, people, the older generation kind of don't really sort of, not all of them, but sort of understand ADHD and all these tools. And you got me
Mm,
thinking about the fact that my mum is a talker. She yaps for England. Like she is always on the phone, and I don't understand why she's always on the phone. But now thinking about it, I feel like she's using that's her version of body doubling because she's able to be on the phone and get stuff done in the kitchen. She's
mm-hmm.
in the kitchen, boiling up the meat, cleaning up the meat, and we're still yapping away on the phone with her friend.
Yeah.
And I used to think like, what are you guys talking about? Like, I don't understand. And kind of thinking back now, like that was her own way of kind of like being able to get some tasks done and being on a phone and just utilizing the opportunity to be able to get the task. Because again,
Mm-hmm.
it's mundane stuff that I don't necessarily think people tend to enjoy doing.
Mm.
And even when I think about it, I've always kind of said that I like, I think my mom has ADHD, but trying telling her that, oh, child, but this is a perfect example of
You be
a bit
body
meaner.
doubling.
Yeah, she's been doing it. She's been doing it since the test of time.
Mm. And she will carry on.
Exactly, she will carry on. Now, when you're in a body doubling session, there are some techniques you can utilize. First technique is the Pomodoro technique, which we have discussed in previous episodes, and it can really be utilized here. You may set a time limit at the beginning of your session, say 20 minutes of work, and then a short check-in before going back to work. The Pomodoro technique can be paired with task setting. At the beginning of each session, you would highlight what you want to achieve in the session for each stint of work. And when you stop, you want to reflect on whether you've been able to achieve that task in the set time. Reflection, basically, were you able to achieve the task in a set time? What difficulties did you have in completing the task? Did you overestimate how much time you needed to achieve the task?
Always.
So those are very interesting techniques and very useful techniques. Um, and I'd love to kind of like go back into, obviously we have talked about the Pomodoro technique and the usefulness of it, but I also kind of like, I really want to kind of like discuss like the task setting. So, um, how that can look like using the technique. So for example, some people might be like, this 20-minute window I'm going to use just to respond to emails. Or I've got a bunch of emails in my inbox that I want to use the 20 minutes to respond back to. And then after those 20 minutes, it could be you reflect or you take a short break or you go clear your head and then you come back for the next 20 minutes and you're like, actually, I need to start on this presentation. I'm just making up examples. I'm going to use 20 minutes to really kind of like work on this presentation. And it could
Mm.
just be, it's just being able to kind of like, it doesn't have to, or you could have an hour and you just be like, I'm going to split the hour into fours. Is it fours or fives? Fours, fives, whatever. And it can be a thing of for the whole hour, I need to focus on responding back to emails or clearing my inbox.
Mm. Mm.
And that can be the task that you do. So it's, I really like the fact that when it comes to task setting, that's what it's, the Pomodoro technique is quite useful with that.
Mm. I completely agree. And I think with like body doubling, that break that you have with the cycle of the Pomodoro technique gives you that chance for that accountability partner to check in.
Mhm.
Did you did you focus on it? Okay, why didn't you focus on it? What happened? Do you know what
Mhm.
happened? And then like that, I suppose that person who's body doubling with you becomes a bit more of a focus for you because they're keeping you focused or you're keeping each other focused on what it is that you want to achieve. So if I did get sidetracked and I didn't do it, then they'd be like, oh, did you do that thing? Be like, nope, but I'm going to do it now.
Mm.
I'm going to do it now. So I think like it really kind of, it doesn't let you get stuck into too long a time.
Yeah.
With the Pomodoro technique, I find that I have to do things that are not too dopamine heavy in that break. That has to be like go to the kitchen, get a glass of water, have a stretch. It can't be like let me just play around with Candy Crush.
Mm. Because then you end up being so focused on that particular moment that time can just go and like,
Exactly.
you know, um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And I
so
suppose
interesting
it,
because, Yeah, go on,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. I was gonna say, as ADHDers, we tend to overestimate how much time a task will take us because our brain's going, oh, that's long. And actually, it's only 5 minutes. So you might think
Yeah,
you needed 20 minutes to go through the 100 emails that you had. And actually, most of them were spam. So actually, it only took you 10 minutes.
yeah.
I'm making a note of that so that you know how long it took you last time.
Took you, yeah. And I
Mm.
also think, yeah, it goes back to it's also a thing linked time blindness. I think that
Yeah.
heavily affects us in the sense that, yeah, to us in our heads, we've over calculated what we think the time would be. And so where if there's a clock to tell us, then we then realize, oh, actually, this is what 20 minutes looks like,
Mm,
rather
mm.
than the 20 minutes that we think it's longer in our heads. Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm that person. Let me tell
I
you,
don't I, I
tw-
don't have any sense of time.
I really don't like, even when I think about like stuff where I'm just like, um, an appointment, and if it's like at 4 o'clock, and I'm like, oh, it's 3:45. I've still got a bit of time. Next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock, and you're like, shit, crap. Oh shit, because in my head, I don't know what 15 minutes look
Mm.
like. 15 minutes to me feels like I've got a bit of time to do maybe a couple of things. Um,
And don't you
and
find that like it never really feels the same each time? So like you might be like, okay, that's what 15 minutes time takes, but then you're like, okay, I was able to do this in 15 minutes, but the next time you do it in 10 because I love setting
yeah,
myself a goal.
yeah.
It's a
And then now you think,
challenge.
oh, yeah, exactly. It's like challenge accepted. So next time you're
Yeah.
challenging yourself to either do it in a 10 minutes or less.
Yeah, yeah. It
When
starts
you're
becoming
like, no, no,
efficient.
no, no, you know. And I love the part of reflection, because I think sometimes you just kind of do the task and just be done with it.
Mm.
Um, but being able to kind of do the task and then ask the questions, were you able to achieve what you need to achieve? I think it also it sets precedence to kind of going forward. Like if you was to come across doing this task again and you feel like overwhelmed by maybe beginning it, you're able to use the time that you reflected and sort of the feelings you felt once you completed the task.
Mm.
I think it's also kind of like sometimes it's creating muscle memory.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes when it comes to certain tasks. Now, house chores, that may be a different thing. But there are
Never any
certain tasks,
consistency.
yeah, that could never be muscle memory for me. I'm not gonna lie
No,
to you.
no,
Because
it's not gonna happen.
as much as I'm like, yay, I did the dishes, I know that by tomorrow I'm gonna have 4 dishes in the sink and I'm back to where I was trying to
It never
figure out how
ends.
did we get here. But I think it's really, really useful to be able to kind of just like use the opportunity to reflect.
I think as well, like I think in our reflection episode we discussed this. I think we released it last year, but we were talking about that idea of we tend to live in the moment, not necessarily looking back or looking things. So the more times that I can prove to my mind that it's not going to take long, maybe just maybe I'll stop avoiding it.
Hmm.
So that you can only get that from reflection, can't you? You can only go, okay, actually, my mind convinced me that this email was going to take me 20 minutes to write, but actually I got 5 things done in that 20 minutes. So
Hmm.
I only needed 5. I'm only putting 5. And then when it takes you longer, you're like, okay, well, I know I'm distracted because I know that only takes me 5. Why am I
Hmm.
distracted? So I do think reflection is important overall in like everything we do as ADHDers.
Yeah, and also kind of like even in the reflections, like we talk about the fact that if there was difficulties, being okay with those difficulties, not beating ourselves up
Yeah.
about it, and just knowing that, okay, these are things to look out for next time, and how can I then go forward without having to experience these difficulties again? What other tools and measurements can I then bring for next time when it comes to this particular task? Do I need to do the task? Could it be a task that I maybe do first thing in the day where my brain is more active,
Mm,
rather than doing it maybe the fourth or fifth task when you've done loads of different things and you feel like, oh, actually, my brain is slowly like, sis, enough is enough.
yeah.
Um, It's also kind of just like working with what works for you. And again, this is where the body doubling is really, really useful, because then you can then address that with the person that is keeping you accountable for next time, where they can then bring that up to you and just say, look, actually, you can kind of just say, this is what my plan is for today. They can then remind you, actually, remember that time when you said you were struggling to do this particular
Yeah.
task? Maybe that be the first thing you do in the day while we're on here together, rather than doing that as like your fourth thing, because obviously you might potentially clash out. So it works out to be such a really good thing to have if you utilize it in a way that works for you. Um, a lot of people might not necessarily enjoy or think that body doubling is a thing for them until, I think it's sometimes when you put a name on something and you kind of think, I don't think that works. But then when you actually flesh it out and do it, then you realize, actually, I didn't know that was what body doubling is. Like, going back to the fact that we were talking about, listen to a podcast, it's being able to hear people have conversations and feel you can be involved in that conversation, but still get your stuff done.
Yeah.
That is a form of body doubling in a different way, without having someone physically there. But it makes you kind of be able to do the task knowing that you've got other voices that is kind of distracting you from what that task
Yeah.
is.
Do you know, I just realised that this is how I got through exams. Like, when you're sitting in a mess hall, like you're sitting in like a hall and you're doing your exams, your GCSEs or whatever, right? You're normally surrounded by all these people. And I remember like looking up and like hearing like at anything that happened, like the ticking clock, because there's always got an analog clock in the room. Like they don't make up so much noise. Like I can hear it. The teacher's always walking up and down the corridors, like you're distracting me. Someone drop a pen, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But I always found when I would look up and everybody had their heads down and they were like doing away that I was like, okay, that my head's I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yeah. And also it's kind of like a secondhand shame, because you don't want to be looking like the damn fool by yourself. Like you're just looking up in the air like, and everyone's like, and you're like, raw.
Or worse, when the teacher comes over and is like, are you okay, Shauna? Is everything... Why aren't
Are
you
you
doing
stuck
your
on that
exam?
question? Are you stuck? Little do they know you're distracted by all the things that's happening around in the room.
Mate, I've been watching them walk all around. I've seen you circle, miss. I've seen you circle.
It's so interesting to be able to pick up on these things now that we're older, and whether we're formally diagnosed or self-diagnosed, and realizing and going back to those times in school, and then kind of identifying this was what it was linked to, when in those times you're just like, is there something wrong with me, or like, am I doing it all wrong? Where it's
Yeah.
like, no, it isn't. This is what it was, and no one ever kind of like gave you the answers in those times. So you kind of just worked with what you got.
Yeah. I think it's like what you said earlier about your mum, like just having the habit, as long as you've known about like talking to friends or whatever, or being on the phone to someone when she's doing her life admin, as I like to call it. And I feel like for me it also adds an extra oomph, because whenever I worked in an office, I found that I would start talking to my colleagues, and it took me a little while to realize that I was working more while talking to my colleagues. The problem is my colleagues were not working at the same time. So I was stopping them from doing work by starting a conversation, but that was starting the conversation is what enabled me to do my work. So at least with like something in a formal, like that you're body doubling, it, especially when you're doing things like work or studying, I feel like it gives you that kind of thing in your mind going, okay, well, I can be quiet for that long.
Yeah.
It's not that long. But when you're in an 8-hour work day, you might be like, oh, okay, let me just, start a conversation with someone to essentially body double. But it's not always useful to people who can't talk and things, so it's kind of like more structured in that kind of, I know that I'm going to work for 20 minutes or I'm going to work for half an hour, whatever it is, and I'm going to have a quick chat with someone, and then I'm going to go back to work, and then your mind can kind of focus on what you're doing because it's not trying to start a conversation.
Yeah.
It's interesting the ways in which I think it's evolved, obviously, since the pandemic and the boom of using more video conferencing
Hmm.
tools. Um, and I generally think that anything that helps neurodivergent people generally also helps neurotypical people too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the lovely thing about us ADHD as a neurodivergent
Mm.
individuals is that we are able to utilize those tools, and knowing that we've created something, we use that for that specific task. Like, for example,
Yeah,
like the whole body doubling over like Zoom and stuff, being able to do that. Now, not to say I'm not trying to draw out any neurotypical people, but neurotypical people tend to just waffle on. Like, if you're in a meeting, it's just like, when you just think like, this is, I also used to really, I'm not even trying to grind my gears about the workplace, but I also used to think, when we have a meeting, let's have a meeting. Let's go through the points. Let's discuss those things. And
it's not about your day.
uh, normally in let me tell you, in neurotypical environments, nothing ever is discussed in a meeting that is supposed to be discussed in a meeting.
No, like why
They
did you
don't
bring me here?
utilize the
You can
time.
send me this in an email.
Yeah. Whereas us neurodivergents, we know that, okay, we're using the space for this. This is what it's going to be
Mm,
used for. We're going to
mm.
utilize it. And so, or even when we know there's a meeting, we come with the points. We keep it moving. We might yap for a hot second, but then we're like, actually, you guys are my work colleagues, so let's wrap this shit up. Let's get stepping.
Yeah, let's,
Do you know what I
yeah, innit?
mean?
Like it's not
Uh,
about, oh yeah, did you have a nice holiday? Oh yeah, great, we went all over. No, stop there. Just
no,
stop there. Did you have a nice holiday? Yeah, I did, thanks. Sit down, start the meeting. This is why we're here.
yeah, we're here to discuss the data entry issues that we have with one of our systems. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Start brainstorming. No, you can't
Yeah,
say brainstorm anyway. Sorry, let's start mind mapping. Apologies.
yeah.
Let's start mind mapping.
Or have you come up with points where you've seen this as an issue? Bring it to the
Mm,
table now. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
let's hear
Or
it.
come
Let's hear
prepared to
it.
the meeting.
Do,
Like,
do you foresee any issues?
yeah.
That too. But I digress.
So
I digress.
So yeah, so it's interesting to be able to talk about all these things. And of course, if there's anything we have missed, let us know in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. I think it's really, really useful. I know, hopefully we're going to come with a part two. But we really wanted to talk about the impact of body doubling and even take it a step further in talking about the techniques, and the impacts these techniques can have. So let's continue having the conversations around body doubling and the impacts it is, the positive, and also, bringing your difficulties and struggles around body doubling and whether it's worked for you. In our next episode, we will be discussing the tools for virtual body doubling, such as ADHD-based sessions and other online apps. So please stay tuned for that episode. So
I,
thanks for joining us for this episode. Please feel free to follow our podcast so you do not miss out on future episodes, and follow ADHD Babes on socials to continue the conversation. ADHD Babe members can also join our conversation on our members only Discord and WhatsApp group. So consider signing up and supporting us in doing more great work to support you, our wonderful community of ADHD Babes. Once again, would love if you leave us a rating and a review and let everyone know your thoughts. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of ADHD Babes, the podcast. If you're a black woman or non-binary person and need help and support in managing your ADHD or advice on diagnosis, please visit adhdbabes.com. No clinical diagnosis is required to join. Join us in 2 weeks for a new episode. Until then, all the love from the ADHD Babes team.
Just as I am, can you take me just as I am?